cutting to the chase, there's two in here that I really want to catch. One of them called Rollies and one of them called the Trouty. The Trouty was the reason I joined the lake. I didn't know about Rollies until after I joined. It's basilesque, to those who remember the great Yateley North Lake fish, and just an incredible carp. Well, how about that for a return? My first trip here for a couple of months, 39 pounds of awesome mirror carp from the foundry. I love this lake. Hello, you join me at the foundry, which is my Lincolnshire syndicate. I say mine, it's not mine, it's one I'm a member of. I've always been pretty consistent and done pretty well and had some mega fish from it over the years, but I'd never fished it properly in the spring. Spring's obviously the time when the fish are at the best weights, the action can be pretty prolific at times as well. So this spring, everything lined up and I made a conscious decision that I was going to fish it properly. I started in mid-March and fished through till the end of May, very early June, just before they spawned. And I've undoubtedly had one of my best springs ever fishing, ultimately resulting in 2 50-pounders in one trip. So what I'm going to do is talk through some of those sessions with you and show you some footage of some epic carp that I've had along the way this spring. We've had a bite on the left-hander. It's not been as productive as the spring, but this is the second bite of this recap trip. Had a lovely, lovely 39-pounder yesterday. And this one, I had a slight change of tactics yesterday when I put the rods back out. I put this out on a bottom bait. It's obviously later in the year, it's mid-late summer. The fish are all sort of empty and hungry after spawning still. So I give them a fair bit of food. And just from the feel I was getting through the leading rod through the spot and what was coming back on the rig, I decided to put a bottom bait out. And it's pulled up tight and it's given a decent account of itself. It's holding its own out there. I mean, I've hooked it at 110, 115, and it's been taking line off me, even at that sort of range, but you know, they're full of energy, they're bristly and they're angry this time of year, so that's no indicator, but don't feel too bad. I'll tell you what though, I know people expect me to say it, but these rods are absolutely delightful. It's a bit longer than I thought actually. Oh, that's a cool one actually. Yeah, happy days. Well, how about that? 31 pounds of lovely common carp, saddle-backed, big thick wrist of the tail and weathered fins even. Proper character. Not a bad trip to recap my spring's fishing on here either. As is the way for all of us, my fishing's secondary to work and family. So this spring I knew I wanted to make a proper go of it. So I'd made plans with work, booked in leave and time off that I was owed, so that I could get 3 48-hour trips a month if I wanted or felt the need. Because of work, the first trip didn't fall until sort of the 14th of March. I'd taken a couple of hours off at the end of my shift so I could get here. It was about 2 o'clock, so I had sort of 4 hours-ish, 4 or 5 hours of daylight really to get sorted. Now I've been 30 acres. I'd popped in for the odd walk round in the cold when it was really bleak. I hadn't seen a lot. There wasn't a great deal of people fishing either. But that first trip there was a couple on, and they weren't getting any action, and they weren't seeing a great deal either. So I opted for a swim called the Last One. Now it's a really popular zone in the spring and summer. There's a roped off area to the right of the swim, you've got some shallow ground, but straight out in front you've got decent depths, sort of 8-9 foots. I decided to fish over some low-lying weed using my usual lead clips, and I was using hinges. And I had a couple that first night, but there was something eating into me about the presentation could be better, and I could be doing something different. Now, I've been fortunate that I've had the new crimp material and the wide gape long shanks in my armoury for a little bit. And I'd been using them as combi rigs for a little while actually on clean ground. But it suddenly dawned on me, not the quickest on the uptake really, that it was the perfect combination for the spinner rig. So tied them up, and yeah, the second night I had another 3 or 4 fish, the biggest being a 36 pounder. So my first trip back, it was 5 fish I'd had that trip, so it was 3 fish the second night, and the biggest was a mid-30, and it was just a brilliant way to start the spring. Well folks, it's the 24th of March, it's my dad's birthday, and I wanted to get out on the bank so I could raise a glass to him tonight. Obviously it's just over a year since I lost him, or we lost him as a family, and then I'm fairly sure he's something to do with that. The rods have only been out an hour or so. I say an hour or so, nah, they've been out probably 3-4 hours now, and that bad boy's just picked up a white hook bait over 6 or 7 spoms of crumb, corn, liquid, as you'd expect really for this time of year, but that is a right result. Now, there's another rule on here where you have to be away from the lake for 4 nights, so you can do a maximum of 72 hours, and then you have to be away for 4 nights, so essentially you can get a trip a week in. So it meant that I could be consistent in how often I could get here, but it didn't detract me from walking around when I wasn't able to fish. So I'd do my 48 hours and then I'd pop in for a walk round, and I'd try and vary that. I'd either try and walk around before work or after work. So I was seeing what was happening at different times of day, and then I'd always try and get back as close to that sort of 4-day mark as I could. So March had started really well, a couple of really big fish to get the fire burning and get the enthusiasm going. And then early April, if you can remember, it was cold, really cold. We had snow, we had hail. Me and Kieran were actually out for a trip, and it was Baltic. It was like we'd been thrown back to the Antarctic in January. So yeah, I had a couple of blanks, but you know, it happens to us all, doesn't it? Me particularly. So yeah, I fished a couple of trips through those Arctic conditions. One of them I bailed out early, I did a night, woke up in the morning, like first light-ish, and just like, you could just tell it wasn't going to happen. So I pulled the plug and set sail for home essentially, with my tail between my legs. You wouldn't think it was that warm last week, would you? Well, not even that. It's Wednesday, so what? Thursday, Friday, yeah, 6 days ago, it was almost shorts and t-shirt weather, and now we've got this. Joys of early spring fishing, eh? I got back around the 8th or 9th of April. There was 4 or 5 others on, but the last one was free. So it sounds a bit repetitive already, this, doesn't it? But so I dropped into last one, wrapped the rods up, fired them out, and to the longer spot, I decided to put 2 on that zone. I'd been fishing 3 on it predominantly, but I decided to fish 2 on that and 1 slightly off and slightly shorter. And anyway, that night, I managed a 35 pounder. So it was nice. It was nice to get up and running again, really, after a couple of blank trips in the cold. It's always, I don't know about you, but for me, It's about consistency. It's not about being top rods. It's not about setting the world alight. It's about being consistent in how I'm fishing, the methods I'm using, the approach I'm taking, and then ultimately the bites I'm getting. If I can put myself in the top anglers for consistency, then I'll be happy. Don't want to be top rod. Don't want to catch the biggest all the time or the most. I just want to enjoy it and be consistent, and that's where I felt I was getting to. Like I say, this spring I wanted to fish this place properly, and I knew to cut into the chase. There's two in here that I really want to catch.
It's a fish called rollies. Probably one of the best fish in Lincolnshire. Look at that.
One of them called rollies and one of them called the trouty. I knew to catch those fish, I needed to be consistent, and I needed to play the numbers game as well. So I knew I needed to be getting bites, and that's why this area between Mozza's and Last One became really sort of prominent in my fishing, because that's where I was seeing the fish, that's where I was getting bites. And the previous spring, that had been an area where they seemed to wake up in as well. So it was a no-brainer for me that I was seeing them there this spring and catching them from there, that I needed to concentrate on that area when I could. Obviously that 35-pounder sort of really sort of stoked it up that I was right on the right lines again. The weather was improving. We came to sort of mid-late April, probably the third week of April. I got down, and Mozza's was free, and there was clearly fish in front of it. And whilst I was setting up, fish were showing. So I got the spod rod out, and I put the usual start point out, sort of 6, 8, 10 midi-X spoms. Again, a lot of crumb and a lot of corn, and it just felt that wasn't enough. It just felt that wasn't enough food for them, just how they were behaving and stuff. So I popped the marker float out there and got in a boat and went out and put probably 3 kilos out of crumb and corn, and added a fair bit of whole boilie to that as well, but 12 mils. So I spread probably 3 kilos around the zone and fished all three as tight as I could. I say tight, probably over a rod length and a bit area, all 3 rods at that range. And that trip was the first trip when it really went bonkers for me. Over the course of the following 48 hours, I had 8 fish. And I had the first real big one of the spring as well. I think I've even got the bite on camera for that.
I've been your sort of personal chef for the last couple of weeks as you've been...
Good morning, folks. It's Monday, it's the 9th of May. I'm in the swim that I had a good hit from last week. I had 8 out of here last week in 48 hours. And got the rods out about 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. It's 7:30 Monday morning now, and that donkey has just greeted me. She's a good 30, might even be a little bit bigger. Buzzing. After that trip in Mozza's, I'd baited that area. Not specific spots, literally an area so that they could graze on it, and like I say, just something else to hold them there other than the naturals, or something to keep their interest. And I got back on the 14th of May. Now this was really fortuitous. Depends how you look at it, I suppose. But I should have been heading to France that day, I think it was, with the Fox boys for a trip. But something had come up at work, which meant that I couldn't get away. It's been a Saturday. There was a few people on. Mozza's was taken. A lad called Mick Henderson was in there. Really good angler. He's going to rinse me for saying this. He's one of the best I've seen in action. He's a ridiculously good angler. Anyway, he'd had one of the big uns. He'd had a fish called free scales that morning at 50 pound, 52 pound, I think it was. Massive fish, massive weight. It's a fish I've had before, and it's a really cool one as well. But Last One was free, which for a weekend was unusual, is probably the best way I can put it. So I had a chat with Mick, scurried round to Last One to have a look. Because there was nobody around there, there was people on. I literally just grabbed the bucket out of the van and scurried round to have a look. Usually I'd take my time, do a couple of laps, but when I got round there, it was just black with fish. Now I've seen that area have a lot of fish in it before, but this was ridiculous. Anyway, settled into the first night, and I had a couple through the night. I say through the night, it was sort of first lightish, sort of 4 in the morning it kicked off. And I had a 36 pounder and another upper 20. Photographed those, literally just getting sorted, and then the right hand rod fished on the short spot was away. It just felt different from the get-go. It absolutely battered me. Shorter range, spring when they're charged up, it just absolutely battered me. Stripping line off the clutch, in a real epic fight. And I remember looking in the net, this massive great big mirror had rolled over, and I thought it was a repeat of the 46. And then all of a sudden something in my head sort of clocked that it could be the big cob. Now the big cob is one of the known bigguns, and I'd caught it before, but it was really spawned out when I'd first caught it. It was like 35 pound when I first caught it, which is still big, but this was clearly massive. My mate Big Craig was due down that morning, and I knew he was going to be on the gate. Some of the rules of the fishery say you can't come in before 6 in the morning, so I knew he was going to be on the gate to come in. So I staked the net, messaged him to say, are you in the queue, essentially, are you on the gate? And he was like, yeah, I'm first on. And I was like, mate, just do us a favour, get straight round to the car park and bring your waders. And he was like, what you got? And I was like, I don't know, but it's big. And he came round, sorted him a brew. It was first thing in the morning, obviously, so sorted him a brew, and then sorted the fish. Now, I gave Craig the scales. We'd zeroed the slings and everything, done what we needed to do. I gave Craig the scales, and I hadn't given him a weigh bar with the scales. So he's a big lad, is Craig, so I thought he'd be all right. He picks the scales up and literally instantly went, Jim, it's a 50 pounder, and put it straight down. And I was like, no, it can't be. Got the weigh bar, as in got storm pole, over with shoulders, weighed it, true enough, 50 pounds, 6 ounces.
What a way to start the day, eh, Jim?
It's not a bad way to start Sunday morning, is it? It's not the one I wanted.
Was it £50 what?
£50.8. I've had this one before, but it was £15 lighter, so
yeah,
it's not a bad way to start the Sunday morning.
No, it's done the same as what I've done. Put a bit of weight on over the years.
Buzzing. Right, let's get it back.
Yeah, man.
Sunday morning passed in a bit of a blur, really. A lot of coffee. Sat there with a stupid smile on my face, really, sort of reflecting. So anyway, repeated the process for Sunday night. I had a couple in the afternoon as well, which was unusual. There was 2 real defined bite times for me this spring, sort of 5:30 in the morning through till about 8:30, 9. Sort of standard, really, isn't it? But there was a real defined evening one as well. 7ish in the evening through till dusk became a real prominent one. So I got the rods done. I got into the habit of redoing the rods mid-afternoon to try and capitalise on that evening period as well as the morning, to sort of giving me 2 bites of the cherry in essence. So I redid everything, got everything sorted for the Sunday night, and the Monday morning, the Monday morning was chaos, absolutely chaos. I had, Christ, what did I have? I don't want to make it into a list. If you like, but to sort of emphasise the chaos, I had that Monday morning. I had a 29, a 38, a 28, a 24, a 29, and a 30, and another 34. It was just ridiculous. This was one of the trips where that planning and everything had kicked in, and I could do the 3rd night. I wasn't convinced I was going to do it, in fairness. And good old Lou, I rang Lewis. And good old Lou was like, Jim, you're having one of those trips, you need to stop. You're having one of those sessions, you really need to stop. You need to see this one through. So I was like, yeah. It's not often I like to agree with Lou or like acknowledge that he's right, but on this occasion he was, bless him. So thanks, Lou. I decided to do the extra night. Got the rods sorted. It had just been carnage. So I got that morning. I was absolutely shattered. I'd had hardly any sleep that trip. So I was trying to have a bit of a nana nap on the bed chair. It was about 5ish in the evening. I was trying to have a bit of a nana nap, and the left-hand rod was away, which was fished one of the ones fished on the longer spots. And I say away, it was a weird bite. Usually everything pulls up tight and holds against the tight clutch, and you'll see the tip pull up. Whereas this one dropped back a little bit. I say dropped back a little bit. Bobbin dropped probably 4 or 5 inches, and then started to pull up again. And then I instantly thought stocky, but as soon as I picked the rod up, I knew it was a different game to that. It wasn't stripping line, it was just heavy, really, really heavy. I knew which one it was. You know, when you get that feeling, you see that sight and you just know. And as I'm playing it, bringing it closer and closer, I can see which one it is. I know my heart's telling me which one it is. So I'm absolutely crapping it. It's the trouty. It's one of the two I've really wanted. The trouty was the reason I joined the lake. I didn't know about rollers until after I joined. So the trouty was the reason I joined the lake. It's basilesque, to those who remember the great Yateley North Lake fish, very basilesque, and just an incredible carp. And so yeah, eventually regain my composure, bring it over the net cord, and I just remember looking at it and questioning myself. I'm looking at it going, yeah, it's got to be. No, it can't be. I secure the net. I ring Craig, who's a swimmer 2 down. I ring Craig, he comes scurrying up. I say, I think I've got the trouty. And his immortal phrase were, what do you mean you think it's the trouty? It can only be it if you think it's it. And he comes wandering along, gets in the water next to the net, looks at it. And I remember him saying quite clearly, if that ain't the trouty, I weigh 8 stone. Craig's 19 stone all day long. So I just realised that there and then, that was the second 50 of the trip. Well folks, I fished hard this spring, really hard. And I think, well, as I've been told, that is one of my 2 main targets. And I think that's another 50 pounder. Happy days.
It is a 50 pounder, Jim. It is a 50 pounder.
There's a second one. 2 50 pounders in a trip, and this one was a new PB as well. And so when we left it in the net for a little bit, got sorted, composed, weighed it up at £51.15, which was a new PB. Can't believe it. Cannot actually believe it. Yeah. Talk about a dream session and a dream spring, you know, and it weren't quite over. I did that night. I could have gone home after the trouty, to be fair, but I did the night. Didn't catch anything else. Because it was a new PB, Big Mark, one of the lads, brought us down a celebratory bottle, which was mega cool of him and a proper touch. You know, it was, well, 11 years since my last PB in this country, so it was kind of a big deal personally. And it was such a cool fish. I mean, I'd photographed it from my mate and knew it was a cool fish, but to actually be holding it, yeah, just mega. And yeah, that's kind of a whistle-stop recap of, I say probably my best springs fishing. It is my best springs fishing. I don't know how it can't be. In 22 nights, I caught one of the ones I've wanted most dearly for the last 4 years, essentially. In that time, that is only its 4th capture, I think. Something like that. I might be wrong on that. It might have done a couple more, but definitely in the last sort of 3 years, that's only its 4th capture that I know of. And yeah, it was, I smile about it now, just a brilliant spring.